What's up, everybody? It's Spencer Alessi, and this is the Esports Narrative. Good morning, good evening, good night. This is episode 22 of the Esports Narrative. I'm Spencer Alessi, and I am joined by Tavian Napier. He's at Thephilocyper, and it's at Thephilocyper. He is an esports life coach, and Tavian, you're focused on competitive gamers and kind of balancing their life and figuring out how to improve their game while not hindering their life or their social life or their work-life balance, so to speak. So tell us a little bit. Welcome to the show, and thanks for coming on with us tonight. We're happy to have you, and tell us a little bit about why you went in this direction and how you got into the esports scene.
Yeah, and thank you for having me on the show. So it's kind of an interesting turn. I'll try to keep it quick, but make all the points relevant. But my background is in animation and game design. I've been in gaming for most of my life in some form or fashion. While I was going to school, I was working at GameStop. I worked there for 6 years, even after I graduated. Always loved being around games. Even did a little bit of game journalism for a few different websites like The Examiner. I did some indie game websites where I talked about like specifically indie games and just loved being around games in any form or fashion. I actually got into competitive gaming through two different avenues at two different points in my life. One was I was really big into Marvel vs. Capcom 3, or Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, and at that time I was also really big into trying to lose weight. And I saw a parallel between the two where I was trying to work on myself and a lot of the challenges that I had with exercise and the discipline transfer to fighting games. Because up until that point, I was always unnatural at anything. If I wasn't good at it, I would just quit. And so when I finally realized that you have to put time into something and you have to actually keep doing it over and over again, this light went off in my head to where, obviously I need to just actually work on something, learn all the different aspects of it, break it down, and just consistently work on it, and you'll get better and better, and your mind will actually be able to unlock different skills, so to speak, in that area, and you just get stronger and you get smarter in that area. And so I didn't really get into the competitive scene in that route, but later on, I became a game developer for a small indie company, and they really wanted to make a competitive style indie Smash game. I really loved and got a high appreciation for game development and fighting games from that route because I realized how hard it was to make a good fighting game. And so ever since then, I had a higher appreciation for it. So fast forward, I moved to Michigan and met some friends, and they took me to my first competitive fighting game tournament, which was Combo Breaker 2015, I want to say. And like ever since then, I just fell in love with the competitive scene. I was never the best at any game. I was decent, but it was just when I got my first win, when I was around a bunch of other people who were really enthusiastic about fighting games and just growing and learning and getting away from all the BS for a couple of days just to have some fun and grow together. It was an amazing feeling, and I wanted more of it. And ever since then, I've been working on just really trying to grow within the FGC. The life coaching aspect kind of came about from losing weight and helping people along the way. I've always been able to help people get better in different aspects of their life. Even if I wasn't the best at it, I could help bring out the best in them. Even when I worked in game development, I had a team under me, and they were better animators for sure. I worked as an animator, the animation lead, and I had people come in and they were looking for me for guidance, and I was helping to make them better, even though they were already more skilled than me. And so I kind of let go of this burden that I have to be the best in order to coach somebody else. And then along the way, I became certified as a life coach, got a lot of training in that, and learned about how to bring out the best in other people in a professional setting to where I can do it in hour intervals, a session, to where it could become profitable. And I learned all the skills to really help me help other people. And so that's where I am now. Right now I'm working on a lot of Street Fighter V players to really develop my own coaching technique that's different from how they do Street Fighter coaching traditionally. Which, nothing against those, is I saw a different style that people can learn, and I want to help them the way that I can.
Now, tell me a little bit about your desire to help people. What's it feel like to help someone get over a hurdle?
That's a good question. So it's funny because usually when I come out of a session, the first thing I do is I go hug my girlfriend, because I have this immense, it feels like I just won a tournament or something. I don't know how to explain it, but when someone legitimately explains to me how they had a breakthrough or how they're seeing improvement in their play style, but also in their mindset, it's like a huge win for me to help people be able to see that. And it's kind of a validation that my style is very effective, or at least it is effective in some form or fashion. So it just feels fantastic. Like I feel all pumped up. Like I have adrenaline pumping. I don't know why that is, but I love doing it.
What does esports mean to you? Like if you had to describe it to someone who maybe wasn't familiar with it, what would you say is esports and what does it mean to you? Why is it so exciting?
To me, esports means the legitimacy that video games can be a form of business. It means to me that the time that I invested into playing video games and learning how to make them is profitable more than just a pastime. It can rival, if not be more exciting than your standard sports. I don't think we should compare them, but in the sense of spectating, I think it can be exciting and relatable because the level of entry is so low. You can't just go to a basketball tournament and enter with the Chicago Bulls, but with the FGC, you can start from the bottom and work your way up. You can go to a tournament. I know with League of Legends and other things, there's invitationals or there's ways to qualify, but those are still there and people don't have that barrier that a lot of traditional sports have.
Now, this is something I think you'll have a lot of input on, and it's the topic of failure. There's a lot of things you can learn from your failures, obviously. What's one of the big reasons people fail from your perspective or from your clients and what you see, and how do people overcome that?
So this is my viewpoint of failure. I believe it's temporary defeat. I got that from a bunch of other motivational speakers, but it's a really great way of looking at it because failure is just a learning opportunity. Look at any video game that you play. Look at the fandom behind the Souls series, the Dark Souls, Demon Souls, and the other one that I can't think of right now. You die over and over and over again in those games, and that's failing if you want to look at it that way. But apparently the people who play it either don't see it that way or they see it as a learning opportunity. Okay, how can I fix this? How can I do better next time? And failure is just it's feedback saying that what you're doing isn't working. You need to try something new. Thomas Edison failed, I can't remember the exact number, but thousands of failures before he got the light bulb. And he just said that every failure was just one way I knew how to not make the light bulb. So that's how I look at it. It's just a learning opportunity.
How do you overcome obstacles? Like if there's something that's got you down, or you notice you're in a slump with your gameplay or something like that, how do you overcome that?
There's a bunch of different ways to really go about that. The first is to take a break. If you're actually in that moment, then get some water, take some deep breaths, and just slow your breathing down. Try to break down what's going on. That's one of the things that I try to do is if you have a challenge, don't overcomplicate it. Try to break it down to its bare minimum. For example, some people just learning Street Fighter have a hard time performing a combo. They're trying to do this long sequence of buttons, but the actual challenge is that they can't do two of those sequences simply, but they're trying to throw on a whole bunch of other things. There's a term for this that I can't think of right now off the top of my head. I was just reading about this actually, but a lot of people in gaming have this habit of learning advanced techniques before they learn the basics. So I would say to go back to the basics and try to solidify those. That's what I do is I go back to the basics, see what I don't know. And then I actually meditate, very regularly. Sometimes I'll meditate on a specific topic and that'll just help me to wrap my head around a certain issue. That's just a me thing. I want meditation to be a little bit more prevalent in esports. I know it's not right now, but that's another suggestion I would say is to take up meditation, to start doing that.
How has that helped you?
Meditation? Ooh, so many ways. So I had a meditation expert on my podcast very recently, but for me personally, one of the things that I had done it for was just kind of, I originally did it just for like spiritual exploration, but along the way, I found that my ADD really lowered. I say that it seems like the channel is being changed in my head, like my thinking, without me knowing it. So someone else has a remote to my brain sometimes. And I noticed that after I started meditating, that went down, fairly well. Like I could think, my mind was quiet. I felt like I was more in tune with my body. I was more aware, more present because I wasn't so distracted. I could focus on things for longer and have more focus. So I think most of the things that I listed there are things that can be applied to gaming or any other sort of performance thing. There's been other benefits along the way, but those are the big ones that like I wasn't expecting, but wound up happening.
What's been one of the biggest accomplishments for you so far? I know you mentioned that when you get out of a session, you feel like you've won a tournament, and you're really elated. What's been one of the biggest accomplishments for you so far in your career?
So I would say that it's kind of a twofold thing. One, I have, I can't give any names, but I have a client who, I value his opinion. He's a very great person, well known, and, they keep coming back to me. And that's a really great feeling to know that I don't have to chase after somebody else. They'll come back and look for my coaching services. That's a really great feeling to know that what I'm doing is actually legitimate, not just to people who are new to esports or trying to get into it, but people who are already well established.
What do you say to someone who's looking for coaching but is not sure about the route they want to take?
I always say, if they're curious about my coaching, I say reach out. Right now I do a lot of free coaching, so I always release one session for free, like a consultation and a session so that they know what they're getting from me. I would say if they're interested in something like, for fighting games, there's Cross Counter, which is a Gutex's brand. There's also like Level Up Dojo, where they have like a lot of videos that you can check out and, reach out to the people. Try to ask, there's websites and if you have questions or you're curious, then reach out to that person because you won't get anywhere if you don't ever reach out. Or just ask a friend, ask someone who's better than you, about games, about the game that you're curious about and try to get some feedback on that if you're not willing to go the traditional, quote unquote traditional coaching route.
Where do you see coaching in like sports psychology? I've heard that term before, or performance psychology. Where do you see that as a trend in esports going?
I hope it continues to grow. There's a person, I think we both know them, guy named Weldon Green, who's really interesting. I got the chance to talk to him very recently, and he actually gave me some advice as well because our approaches are kind of similar, but also very different. And I hope it grows because it's not just the hard skills when it comes to competitive games. There's a lot of the mentality, a lot of the invisible stuff, the emotional management, that I think a lot of high level players can't really give to their coach, quote unquote clients. That takes a little bit of, I would say a lot of professional training or experience specifically in like mental and emotional management, leadership, because high level players are great and sometimes they acquire these skills through necessity and just naturally having them or cultivating over time, or they have some sort of coach. But a lot of them within esports, I noticed their social skills and perhaps like their leadership skills are a little bit unrefined when it comes to things outside of gaming specifically. So it's hard to relate that knowledge and convey it to their clients. So I
do you find that there's a correlation between coaching or mindset coaching, performance psychology, things like that, coaching in general? Do you find that there's a correlation between that and more professionalism and accountability in esports? It's something I'm really passionate about, is these, particularly the younger players who are just getting in the scene. Maybe they haven't gone to college. They haven't really experienced life yet. They don't have the life skills that you and I might have at this point in our lives. Do you find correlation in, more accountability or professionalism with coaching and things like that?
Yeah, that's a really huge part of it. The accountability, I would say, is one of the biggest parts of coaching, or any sort of like mentorship type of deal, because, more and more, especially in esports, we don't have that level of accountability. We have people who give us advice, but they're not checking in on us saying, hey, did you get this thing that you said you were going to get done? That's really important. because they need that sort of, it's like a low level form of stress to where you know someone is going to ask you about this in a certain amount of time. And that creates this mindset of, oh, okay, I need to keep this top of mind. I need to make sure I get this done. But also making sure on the coach's side that it's important to know that the goal that they set is for their own benefit. It's not for the coach's benefit. It's not for the teacher or anything like that. It's for the person who wants to grow. And so when they have this sense of accountability, eventually that kind of becomes ingrained. It becomes muscle memory to where they create that habit. But when it comes to esports, we don't traditionally have a coach. So we're trying to improve in these skills that are becoming competitive, like spectator sports. You know, you want to get as good as these players that are there. So you have to have some form of accountability. Some people naturally have it, or they're just super passionate. But the most of us, I think their downfall is because of their lack of accountability to themselves. And so they kind of just do whatever they want. They practice whatever they want. They go online and play ranked over and over again without cultivating any new skills or practicing their basics. And so I think that's a big part of where coaching comes in hand, is the accountability.
How big are habits? Like, how important is it to, whether it's practicing or just going about day-to-day life, to have routines and habits that are constructive?
I would say that's everything. When it comes to habits, you know, when you first turn on the game, what are you doing? What's your habit with your mindset? What mindset do you have coming to the game? Are you kind of drowsy? Or are you just like, okay, time to turn on the game and do some practice? Or are you like, okay, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to learn these specific things. That's a habit. That mindset is a habit. Then what you do when you turn on that game is a habit. Do you go online and just do warm-ups to where you're practicing your basics over and over again? Think about, I've done karate for numerous years, and every time I would go into the dojo, my sensei would have us do our warm-ups. They would have us do these basic forms and techniques and attacks over and over again. We knew them, but we still had to do them. And every time we did them, it strengthened it more. It made it more of muscle memory, and that became a habit. And those habits grew into our foundation that led into more advanced techniques. If you're trying to learn a combination, but you don't know how to throw an individual punch, kick, and a deflect, when you do that combination, each one of those individual pieces are going to be weaker. So if your habits are weak and you're just trying to learn all the advanced stuff, or you're just trying to win a match without having the habit of looking for the right information, your habit of how you approach your opponent, what you're thinking about, that's literally everything. And that'll make or break a great player.
How do you improve a habit, or how do you install a new habit, so to speak?
So statistics-wise, it takes somewhere between like 21 to 60 days, depending on the level of difficulty in the habit and the person. It takes that many days to really cultivate a habit. So daily, the best way to learn a new habit is to start one habit at a time. So if you're trying to, for example, improve your footsies in a Street Fighter, you want to go in and do a specific exercise every day before you do anything else to really make sure that you're ingraining that new habit. So before you learn anything new, before you do anything that you already know, just practice this one new habit that you're trying to do. You don't have to overcomplicate it. Make it very simple. Make it so that you're fully engaged, and just practice it at least once every time you turn on that game, at least preferably once a day, which I think is very realistic. So you want to make it simple. You want to make it quantifiable. So, you know, you want to do it at least 10 times in a row. And if you want to get really good at it and ingrain it into your brain, you want to do it 10 times without fail, depending on what that thing is. But you really want to quantify it. You want to have like a deadline. You want to make sure that you're doing it, you know, every day. And that's the best way of going about it. And then trying to do more than one habit is actually kind of detrimental. If you're trying to learn multiple new things, you actually are making it harder to learn those things, because your mind has to really work a little bit harder to take in all this new information.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear. And, you know, when thinking of my own life, there's things that I do every day. Are there things that you do every day that are intentional habits that you're either trying to, you know, reinforce or install? What are some things that you do every day that kind of helps you to maintain your level of energy or your excitement for what you're doing?
For me right now, it's yoga and meditation first thing in the morning. And then I also either journal or write on something. And that really gets my mind in the right mindset to start the day. I purposely set my mind to get pumped up. And I've actually been experimenting with my meditation with a new, well, it's not a new form of meditation, but I've recently discovered it called the Wim Hof method or technique. And it's a little bit more of an intense form of meditation that really gets the blood pumping throughout your body. It oxygizes. I can't say that word right now, but it puts oxygen into your body and really gets you into like a nice euphoric state. It's really fascinating. I recommend checking it out for people who are a little bit more active. It's a little scary the first time you do it, but it's very fascinating. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but something really interesting is that normally if you exhale, I can hold my breath for like 10 seconds. If you get out all the air out of your lungs, about 10 to 20 seconds. When I do the breathing technique, I can go for about 2 minutes with no oxygen in my lungs. So it's really, really fascinating. I recommend at least Googling it and trying it for yourself.
So what's that like? Is it like you're breathing heavily, or what's it like?
So it's basically 30 inhales, like fully inhale, and then let your lungs just deflate on their own. And you kind of do it rather quickly. And then on the 30th inhale, you exhale all the way for as long as you can. And you can get a timer. I stopped using a timer because it's not really that important to me anymore. But I can tell that the more I do it. So there's 3 reps of this. So after you exhale all the way, you wait until basically there's like a gasp reflex. And so as soon as you feel yourself wanting to gasp, you just inhale all the air into your lungs and hold it for anywhere between 10 seconds to a minute, depending on the variety of experiences. You'll kind of feel a rush, and that's 1 rep. And you'll feel like a lightheadedness. It's kind of like a nice euphoric state. It's a little bit scary, but after that, you just go back and do the 30 reps, then exhale again, and you do that 3 times. Afterwards, I'll meditate for anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes afterwards, just to kind of be aware of my body, put myself in the right mindset, think about what I want to accomplish, what kind of mindset I want to have when I approach the day. And that kind of gets me in the right mindset, and it also helps your body be more prepared if you're doing something physical. You can do more like push-ups or whatever, your stretches. You'll actually be able to get more out of your stretch. So it's very, very fascinating. I'm doing just like the bare basic form of the method right now, just to not overcomplicate it and build a new habit into my repertoire. And it's been very, very fascinating, and it helps me. I've tried playing Street Fighter somewhat after it, not immediately after it. I'll write first, but I'll play Street Fighter and I'll go in and practice some of my warm-up techniques, and I'm just a little bit more alert. My reflexes are better. It's really fascinating. But yeah, those kind of habits. And I'm not saying that you have to wake up and meditate and do yoga. That's not your thing. But find something that pumps you up in the morning. If it's listening to music, or if it's like listening to, if you're religious, listening to like a devotional or reading a devotional, anything that kind of gets you in that right mindset, doing it first thing in the morning before you do anything for anybody else.
Now, you mentioned reading and journaling, actually. Mm-hmm. You said that meditating has kind of helped your ADD. What has journaling done for you?
I would say it's helped me to be able to express myself both written and verbally. Something that I learned a long time ago is that I was very reserved when it comes to talking. I dumbed down my talking. I grew up in an area to where intelligence wasn't something that was desired by most people, and so I kept a lot of my thoughts to myself. I dumbed down my vocabulary to match the people around me, and it wasn't until a friend pointed out that when I journaled that I spoke more intelligently to myself than I did to other people. And I never questioned that until she had pointed that out. And so ever since then, I just kept working on my writing and learning more about writing and growing my vocabulary and taking pride in being able to speak. I don't go out and try to use big words just for the sake of using them, but when I need to express myself, I'm able to do so because I have access to a bigger arsenal of words. And it's made it to where my communication is better when I'm talking to somebody. I'm able to relay my ideas better. I don't want to just talk to someone or talk at someone. I want them to be able to understand where I'm coming from as clearly as possible. And so the more I work on expressing myself, the more I'm able to paint a better picture so that other people can understand where I'm coming from.
How important is that communication?
That's super important. It's super important so that, especially with coaching, because when someone's saying something, I have to be able to decipher what they're saying and relay it back to them clearer than they said it to me, and make sure that they that's actually what they're thinking. So when I'm communicating, I want to make sure that I also understand where they're coming from. And sometimes people aren't skilled with communication, so me being able to explain how they feel, so that I understand the way they feel is very important for me.
Now, I'm curious to as your perspective on where the opportunity is in esports? Obviously, you're, doing this for a living or making, money coaching, and you're doing that as a business. But I'm curious to see, where the other opportunities may be in esports to capitalize on the excitement, whether it's coaching or playing or running events or broadcasting or being a caster or a commentator. Where do you see as being an exciting place for people to make a career in esports?
As a coach or just in general?
Just in general, like in any facet.
I think the possibilities are really endless. I haven't been to any tournaments outside of just like the fighting game scene, and that's honestly more quote unquote poverty than like League of Legends and a lot of these other bigger games. But I think that this is an ecosystem. You start with like you have the vendors, the people who are just there selling their goods and services, but now they have a platform to be able to do so, and they go straight to the people that that want to buy what they have. So you have all this cool fan art from people, and they're supported by people who go to the tournament. You have the commentators, you have the people who run the tournaments, you have the players, the coaches, the people who actually own the teams. You have people like Rick Fox now. He's a former, I'm not big into regular sports, but he's a basketball player, and he's won, I think, a world championship. I'm not saying the right term, so don't hate me too much. But, actor, the entrepreneur, and this person is buying into, he bought a team. He bought Team Echo Fox, who has League of Legends. They have, I believe they have Overwatch now. They have Street Fighter, Tekken, MK game, or not MK, but NetherRealm games. So we have these entrepreneurs, these people who know how to handle their money outside of the gaming scene, investing into it. We have Red Bull now investing pretty heavily into esports, at least Street Fighter. I think there's a lot of room for this to grow. The one thing that I would say is that I want gamers to develop their own skills personally. Like I want them to develop entrepreneurial skills. I want them to develop personal development skills, good habits, because, we have these sponsors coming in, which is great, but we need to develop our own skills so that we as a individual and as a group can be able to see this is a good deal, or this represents esports good, this doesn't represent esports well. Like, we need to be able to make our own deals. We need to know what is a good and a bad deal. We need to know how to handle ourselves, and after we're done being players or commentators, how to monetize ourselves for the long term, and how to stay within esports if we want to stay within esports. If we have a player who's retired and he still wants to be in esports, but he doesn't have the skills to do so because all he's done is play games and everyone else has done everything for him, he's kind of SOL. So that's okay.
I was just gonna say there's only so many commentating jobs that can go around. You know what I mean? Right.
So I think there's a lot of other jobs that I haven't listed, but at the same time, when I created this job for myself, I didn't know there was at least a few other people doing it. I just did it because I wanted to, and I saw it could benefit esports. I saw it could benefit the FGC. And so the one thing I would say is that if you have an idea that you think could benefit your community, then pursue it. Because if you have a passion for it and you want to do it, find a way to make it work, but you're going to have to develop other skills along the way to make it work. Don't, definitely to cultivate that skill and cultivate that one habit, but also be aware that unless you have partners or something along those lines, you're going to have to wear multiple hats.
How do we as an industry, or particularly talking about the players, how do we develop life skills outside of video games?
That's a interesting and a good question.
Because a lot of players they're grinding. They're putting in a lot of hours every week, every day to become the best at their game. I mean, how do you become a well-rounded person? Because, the average lifetime of a professional player is, only so long, just like traditional sports. And by the time they get out, whether you're 30 or, 25 or wherever age you fall out, I mean, you have to survive. You have to make a living doing something. How do you do that and still be top of your game?
There's a lot to that.
I mean, maybe you don't. Maybe you just go all in on your game, and maybe, you let the chips fall where they may, and you take opportunities as they come. I don't, who knows? Yeah,
I think there's no right answer for every individual person. The first thing I want to say is to get a life coach. That'll make it a little bit easier. But on a serious note,
Shameless
I think
plug.
exactly. But no, on a serious note, I think that you have to treat it just like any other skill that you're good at, or any other, like if you're playing League of Legends or whatever, you have to find where you're weak at. At least be aware of what you're not good at. Learn a little bit, and I would say invest in yourself, because before you invest in anything else, it's important to make sure that you're investing in yourself, because you're going to be stuck with yourself for the long term. If God forbid one of these games just, hits rock bottom and doesn't do well anymore, what do you do? I definitely believe in chasing your dreams, and I'm not one to speak. I'm doing some weird stuff within esports myself, but I'm also developing skills, how to build a website, how to, all these different habits that I'm trying to learn. And it's not always easy, but I think it's important to understand what it takes to know what you want. So I would say, to answer your question, first find out what you want to do. Like, picture yourself 5, 10, 20 years from now. What do you want to be doing? If it's legitimately playing games for the rest of your life, like competitively, find a way to make that work no matter what. Learn the skills or find the people that'll help you make that happen no matter what. If you just want to be in esports 10 years on the line, specify what that is. Find a way to make that work. Along the way, keep doing what you're best at. But if it's still vague to you, just keep learning and keep exploring. Find time, set aside an hour or something like that to work on yourself. Read books. Study personal development. There's tons of different people, YouTubers, books, audio files, audiobooks that you can listen to, read, watch, and learn more about personal development. There's some very basic things to understand, but I mean, just start with one thing, like I said before, with like your game, and just develop that. It could be exercise, and at the same time, a lot of these personal development skills will help you get better at games. For example, exercise. If you exercise more, that's going to help you have more mental focus. You're going to be more aware of your body. If you eat better, your diet's going to help you. You get like something like fish oil, you get all these different vitamins in your body, your brain's going to work better. That's science. That's simple. If you start meditation, it's the same thing. Most of the personal development habits that you try to cultivate are going to wind up helping you, and they're going to help your mind, and they're going to help you to be able to think about what you're doing on a higher level. I spend most of my time on physical things, and this is where I get most of my findings from, but then I apply it to my game. And while I'm personally not that great, and I don't brag or try to make myself to be a great player, but I take these same findings and show it to my clients or other friends, and they apply it, and they take it and make it their own. So I definitely think that personal development will help you be able to play better. There's some books that I can recommend that are simple, and it'll help your thinking, and it's not a huge time investment. But yeah, that's kind of where my mind is around that.
What books are you currently reading?
Well, right now it's kind of personal development, but it's more on the financial side. But it's Tony Robbins, so it's always personal development, but it's Money Masters the Game. Outside of that, I've been listening to Think and Grow Rich. I've listened to that book like 3 or 4 times. And then the next book I'm probably going to listen to that I've already listened to, I think 2 to 3 times, is a book by Josh Waitzkin. Really great book. It's called The Art of Learning. He was the guy that Searching for Robbie Fisher was based off, the movie and the book. But basically, without spoiling too much for you, he's one of the youngest chess grandmasters ever, then switches to martial arts, which is a very mental and a very physical, contrast. And he becomes the world champion of a martial art. And he takes the same lessons that he applied from chess and puts it into martial arts. And it's a very fascinating story of his transition and his teaching and his coaching, the whole journey. So that's a great book that I would recommend to any person that's into competitive gaming.
Now, being the philosopher, you give a lot of advice and share your wisdom with people. What's some of the best advice someone's ever given you?
I think I've heard this multiple times, but I think it stuck with me when I spoke to Ed Boon. I met him at Combo Breaker, and I was really nervous to talk to him, but I wound up asking him, I was like, hey, if you could give me one bit of advice, and I was a journalist at the time, so I was doing it for a website, but I was also doing it for myself. And he said, when I asked him how do I become successful, or, when I want to do something, and he's like, stick to one thing, he told me his story about him being a programmer with, I believe, Midway. And he just worked on becoming a programmer and got better and better at it. And, he found what he loved and he worked on it and he grew. And that's something that I've applied to myself. I've definitely learned other skills as well, but I focused on my coaching at a certain point. And that's what I'm doing right now is I'm focusing on that and trying to grow it in any way that I can. And I think that has gone a long way. And I think that has multiple meanings to where if you're doing something, don't multitask as well. That's not exactly what he meant, but just from different books and things that I've read, focusing on one thing is great, but then you can also apply it. Me personally, again, ADD, I want to do more than one thing at once, but you just physically can't get as much information when you're doing that. When you're splitting your attention, that's like splitting a current of electricity in two different directions. You're going to lose energy. And so that's something that I try to take to heart is doing one thing, focusing on it, for the long term and the short term, the day to day.
What do you think, you are doing this because esports is really exciting and there's a lot of opportunity. What do you think the esports industry needs to continue to grow and be successful?
So I can't say for games like League of Legends because I'm slowly getting into those, but I don't know as much as I do about like fighting games per se. But I would say more of an understanding, an abundance of players or gamers that are knowledgeable, that have skills outside of just gaming. More people with a background in business or more people with a background in marketing and communication, all these different skills that I think complement them. I think there's a lot of talented gamers out there, and a great example is Sonic Fox, Echo Fox, Sonic Fox. And I can't wait for this kid to grow up older and go to college because he wants to create video games. And I want to see more for us by us content. I want to see more people contributing back to the FGC rather than just trying to win tournaments. And that's not a bad thing. I definitely think that's great, but I want to see more of them trying to actually build up the FGC in various ways. A lot of the commentators I think are the best, the personalities, those people are really good, but more people behind the scenes. We need more tech people. We need those skills. We need them. I want to see people actually utilizing their skills that they like to do. Some people don't want to be the best gamer. They don't want to win a tournament. They just want to be there. Find a way to make yourself useful, not in a mean way, but just your skills are useful. Find what you love doing and see if you can find a way to combine it within esports. And it might be more possible than you realize.
What's been one of the most memorable moments for you in esports?
I want to say, I don't know if I can consider this technically esports because the FGC is still like growing, but I think my first win at Street Fighter 4, because that was the moment that I got hooked on competitive gaming. There's been a lot of other smaller moments, but I just remember that rush that I got from winning my very first fight and wanting more of that. I remember I want more of this. I want to have more of that. So I think that was the moment that I got hooked and fell in love with competitive gaming.
If you go back in time, let's say 3 to 5 years, and you could give yourself one piece of advice, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give yourself?
What advice would I give myself? I would say to find time to cultivate my skills. I was a very lazy kid, like 10 or so years ago. I just started getting very much into personal development like 5 years ago, but if you go back even farther, it was work in video games or college work in video games, and I didn't do much work. I didn't cultivate my skills. And that's one of the things, at this point, I don't regret it. I've learned from that, but if I could change that, I would. I would start to cultivate my skills sooner. I would create the disciplines, the habits of working on my skills, whether it be animation or 3D modeling or playing one specific game and getting better at it and practicing specific things instead of just going online and playing ranked mode over and over again. I would definitely learn to cultivate my skills on a regular basis.
Yeah. Now, we'll close out the show with you giving us your perspective on what it takes to be successful as a coach, and share with everyone who, let's say that maybe somebody who's listening to this is maybe realizes they're not going to be the best Street Fighter player or the best League of Legends player. Let's say maybe there's people out there that realize they're better at, teaching, even if they're not mechanically better at a game than someone, like you said earlier on. What would your advice be for someone who wants to coach and wants to help people improve and go down that route of coaching? What would be your advice to them?
I would say to just go out there and find people to coach. Start reaching out. I would say, depending on how your friends are, I wouldn't ask your friends first, because you want to find someone who's actually serious. And if you're serious about helping other people, then I would recommend getting on a schedule, meeting that person once a week minimum and going over some things and find your own coaching style. I recommend learning and reading books. If you can't afford to go to a school to get trained professionally, then find books. There's YouTube. There's other quote unquote free ways to get information online that I'm not going to recommend, but that's an option. But just try it. Go on Reddit and say, hey, this is what I'm doing. I'm learning. I'm not charging anything. That's the first thing that I do. I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this. And one of the most important things is don't worry about what any of the naysayers tell you. You're going to have people, the more that you develop your skills and the more that you put your name out there, you're going to have people telling you that you can't do what you are trying to do. And don't let them get you down. Use that as motivation to prove them wrong. Use that as motivation to say that I can do this. If you like it, find a way to do it. If you make YouTube videos, try that. But whatever it is that you want to do, keep working on it and don't quit. Just like getting good at a game, it takes work and it takes learning skills. If you play any game, when you're playing League of Legends, you're not just playing League of Legends. You're learning a lot of sub-skills along the way. And you have to learn all these sub-skills to get better. Just like in Street Fighter, you have to learn all these sub-skills, combos, footsies, teching, anticipation, all this stuff that makes up playing the game. And similarly, with coaching, there's a lot of different hats that you have to kind of wear and learn. So just do it, keep working on it, find people that are serious, that want to get better and are willing to give you honest feedback. And don't be afraid to get that feedback. That's the most important part. Ask them, what could I have done better? What did you feel you got out of this? Make sure that you're getting that feedback and you're applying it each time that you're coaching somebody.
That's an important aside that I just want to touch on is what level of knowledge for the game that your client competes in do you have to have? Like if you're coaching a CSGO player or a League of Legends player or an FGC player, what level of knowledge do you have to have for the game in order to, successfully help them along?
I would recommend having a higher knowledge than that player, for sure. It should be a continual knowledge. You should always be trying to learn. I want to make sure that I mention that. I don't think starting off you have to have a super high understanding. I think it's important to be able to help that player understand, because you should be learning from the player. Learn what the player knows. If you don't understand something, never be afraid to ask them what that means. You're not going to ever know it all. That person is going to be able to teach you, so you need to understand that you might be the coach, but every person that you're coaching is also your teacher. They're your student and your teacher, and you have to have that mindset all the time, because you're always going to be learning from them. So if they say, hey, I'm trying to get better at this specific thing, ask them what they mean. If they're trying to get better at jungling, understand specifically what part of jungling they're having trouble with. And then if you don't understand, have them help you understand. And if you guys can't, neither of you understand, then you need to find out together. Otherwise, you're going to hit a wall. So never be afraid to say you don't know, but never not try to learn. That was hard to say. So yeah, always be learning and never be afraid that you don't know. But yeah, I would say on a basic level answer, you need to be at least a competency higher than the person that you're coaching.
Yeah, last thing, I keep thinking of things that would really provide value to the listeners and to people who are venturing down this path. How important is that transparency of, as a coach, being like, this is my level of understanding and knowledge of the game, and this is what we're going to work on. How important is that transparency and that honesty and relationship and trust?
I think that's super important. Some of the first things that I always say is that, one, I personally don't tell anybody any personal information about any of my clients, because I want trust to be a number one thing. Trust on both sides has to be there. Otherwise, the coaching session is not going to go anywhere, because you want to make sure that this person is telling you everything honestly, and you need to make sure on your side that if you don't know something, that you're trying to find that out and you're letting them know. You might be afraid of being judged, but you can't do that. You have to put yourself out there. You have to be willing to look stupid. You should always come from a place of curiosity and always trying to understand. You're not trying to be a therapist and tell them, oh, this is your issue, that's your issue. You're trying to help them understand the issue that they're having. If you're wrong, then make sure you have that space so that you're wrong. I always remind my people, hey, if you think that I'm wrong, let me know. But this is what I think, and I want you to let me know what your thoughts are. And it's very fascinating when you leave space for that. They'll let you know.
Yeah, kind of. It sounds like helping someone kind of self-reflect in a way.
Yeah. One thing I'll add that I think is really interesting is that as you get better at coaching, if you go about it the route that I'm going, you'll find that not only can you help somebody get better with a lot of the challenges that they're having, once they reach a certain skill level, you'll find that some of the challenges that they're having actually reflect their personality. Like a certain player might have an issue with, not making the right decisions in certain options, or they know what to do, but they don't take that action. And there's 4 skills, and you'll find these common traits. And you'll come to realize that it's something like they don't have confidence in themselves, and their level of confidence in themselves is actually affecting their play style, and they don't even know it. And so all these skills that you want to work on can be solved by understanding where their mindset is when they're actually approaching these things. And it's really fascinating when you come across that. You want to make sure that you're not assuming, you're asking the questions, and if you come across something like that, you ask them, what do you think about this? And, if it's right, then you found a shortcut to working on some of their issues. Rather than trying to develop these skills, you're trying to develop the mindset around that so that they break these bad habits that they've built around, self-confidence or some sort of over-aggression or something like that.
Yeah. No, I said we were going to close out the show, but I just, I can't help but continue the conversation because I just love where this is going. I think that this provides a lot of value for people who want to get down this path, want to go down this path, because I think this is going to be something that we'll see more and more of. You and Weldon are 2 of the only people that I know doing it right now, and I don't know everyone. Obviously, I'm sure there's more, that are doing the kind of the mindset coaching thing. Obviously, there's coaches, very prevalent in esports, but how do you brand yourself in this industry? Like, if you want to brand yourself as a life coach or a mindset coach or a performance coach, how do you brand yourself in esports to be able to tell people what you do and show them?
That's such a challenging thing personally. Someone who's still learning in marketing, but I've been leaning more towards a performance coach because it really encompasses everything that I am about. I prefer a mastery coach, because it's mastery of oneself and mastery of the skill that you're working on. I love the word mastery because it's not a destination, it's a journey. It's continual. So personally, I would say I'm a mastery coach when it comes to that sort of area. But it's such a challenging question. But I would say yes, performance coach right now.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on the show, Philosopher. It's awesome tagline, but I think that's really unique and brandable.
Thank you.
So super awesome in the tag. But thanks for coming on the show and sharing some time with us. I know that the listeners will definitely get a lot of value out of this. I got a lot of value out of this conversation, so I hope that the listeners did as well.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I had a lot of fun. This was a great conversation. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, and we'll have to have you on again because I know there's so much more we can talk about in this particular area. And again, I just want to say thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you. I am always down to come back.
Awesome. With that, I just want to remind everyone that if this all goes as planned, this show is just the beginning. Thank you, listeners. I really appreciate you. It would mean the world to me if you subscribed and shared the show. Your word of mouth is amazing.